The town was small, quiet. People spoke in hushed tones about the woods. Never go there, they'd say. Not at night, not alone. Legends whispered about a house that stood deep within the forest, a house with secrets. Old Man Hemlock swore it was true. He'd seen it, he said, with his own eyes. A house that watched, that called to you. A house you entered, but never truly left. Most laughed at his stories, but not Jenna, and not Mark. They knew better than to tempt fate. Jenna and Mark were campers, best friends, inseparable. They loved adventure, they craved the unknown. One night, huddled around a crackling campfire, the legend of the house came up. A dare hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Jenna, ever so bold, met Mark's gaze. Her eyes twinkled with a dangerous light. "Let's prove them wrong," she whispered. Mark hesitated. He'd seen that look before. It usually landed them in trouble. But tonight, under the watchful gaze of the stars, he found himself nodding. The forest was alive. Shadows danced, branches clawed at the night sky. A thick fog rolled in, swallowing the moonlight. Jenna led the way, her flashlight a beacon in the swirling grey. Mark followed close behind, his heart pounding in his chest. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unsettling. Deeper and deeper they ventured, each step taking them further from the familiar, further into the legend. And then they saw it, a clearing in the fog, and in the center, the house. It stood tall and imposing, its silhouette stark against the moon's pale glow. The windows were dark, lifeless eyes staring out at them. Jenna shivered, a strange chill running down her spine. Even from a distance, the house felt wrong, unnatural. Mark felt it too, a sense of dread of being watched. He wanted to turn back, to run, but something held him rooted to the spot. Section 5. A welcome that isn't. They approached slowly, cautiously. Each step felt heavy, as if wading through water. The silence was broken only by the sound of their own breathing. The front door was ajar, inviting them in, or daring them to enter. Jenna reached out a trembling hand and pushed it open. The hinges groaned, a long, mournful sound that echoed through the stillness. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten things. Mark swore he heard a whisper, a faint sigh that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "Hello!" he called out, his voice shaky. There was no reply, only silence. Section 6. The long hallway. A long, dark hallway stretched before them. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly drapes, and dust lay thick on the floor. Jenna took a hesitant step inside, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Shadows danced and flickered around them, playing tricks on their eyes. Portraits lined the walls, their subjects staring down at them with grim expressions. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that their eyes followed them as they moved. Mark felt a cold spot brush against his arm, though there was no draft. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around himself. At the end of the hallway, a large, ornate mirror hung on the wall. Its silver surface was tarnished with age, but it still held a strange allure. Jenna found herself drawn to it, her feet moving as if guided by an unseen hand. Mark tried to call out to her, but his voice caught in his throat. As Jenna drew closer, she noticed something strange. Reflected in the mirror, she saw not herself, but two children. A boy and a girl, their faces pale and drawn. They were dressed in clothes that looked centuries old, their eyes wide and pleading. Jenna reached out a hand to touch the reflection, her fingers passing through the cold glass. Suddenly, Mark grabbed Jenna's arm, pulling her back with a sharp tug. "Don't!" he yelled, his voice cracking with fear. "Don't touch it!" The mirror shimmered, the reflection of the children fading as quickly as it had appeared. Jenna stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. Mark looked around frantically, his eyes searching the shadows. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Now! He grabbed Jenna's hand and they turned and ran, their footsteps echoing through the silent house. They didn't stop running until they were back in the forest, the house no longer visible behind them. Jenna leaned against a tree, gasping for breath. Mark looked at her, his eyes wide with fear. "Did you see them?" he asked, his voice trembling. "The children in the mirror?" Jenna nodded, unable to speak. What had they stumbled upon in that house? What kind of place held such darkness, such sorrow? They didn't speak another word as they made their way back through the forest, their steps hurried and uncertain. The fog seemed thicker now, as if reluctant to let them leave. They finally reached the edge of the woods, the lights of the town a welcome sight. As they stumbled back onto the familiar path, Jenna paused. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling, "look!" She held up her compact mirror, the moonlight reflecting off its silver surface. Mark gasped, his eyes widening in horror. Staring back at them were not their own reflections, but the pale, drawn faces of the children from the house in the woods, the children who were trapped, who would never leave. And as the fog closed in around them, Jenna and Mark knew, with a chilling certainty, that they would never be the same again.